Hi everyone. In this video tutorial, I'm going to take you back over to Photoshop and we're going to go over what you need for your framing assignment. So the framing has two parts. There's the framing of the image to the outside of its area, and in this case I've asked it to be 6 inches by 6 inches. So here's an example where the image is smaller than the 6 inches it's within and it leaves a margin. And here it's what we call a full bleed, so there's no margin. The image is the same size as the canvas it sits on. And in here we have what's called a partial bleed. So it partially goes all the way to the edge, but it does leave some area. So that's kind of like the first aspect of framing. And the second is I've asked you to take one of these 3 lines of text, whichever quote you want, and you're going to be doing 6 variations. So all 6 of them should have the same image and the same text, but I want you to keep experimenting with the framing. So here's an example of 3 of them. They all have the same image and they all use the same quote. But as you can see, there's a different impact and possibly a different way that we interpret the image that is behind the quote simply because of the way that the words frame the image and the way that the words themselves are framed. So bringing you over here to Photoshop, I've already opened up an image, and this image is too large, so the first thing is I need to crop it. I'm going to take my crop tool, and then I'll go up into the options bar, and if it's not already selected, choose width, height, resolution. I'm going to put in my target size. I want this to become 6 IN for 6 inches by 6 IN with a resolution of 72. And now I can adjust my crop and move it around to get what I want. And I kind of want the turkeys off here a little bit to the side. And now this is pretty much what I want for my image. So I'm going to use this same one for all 6 variations. Before I commit to it, I'm going to make sure that the delete cropped pixels option in the options bar is checked. So I think when we previously talked about the crop tool, we did not have this checked because I did want to leave these pixels there in case I wanted to. Here, I'll turn that off. And so if I commit, I'm going to zoom in. So if I move my image around, it's all still there. The problem with that for this exercise, if I'm trying to rescale it, I can't really keep that same crop. If I make it smaller, I get all of those pixels which I thought I had deleted back. So I'm going to undo that. Go back to my crop tool. Let's see, I have to go into my history panel back to the state when I opened my image. I have to zoom back down to 25% and crop it again 6 inches by 6 inches. So again, I'll kind of move that crop to where I want it to be. I like the turkeys a little bit off to the side, something like that's fine. And I'm going to make sure that delete cropped pixels is on because I actually do want to get rid of all of that stuff. So this will be my image and I'm going to commit to it. It seems very small, but that's because I was viewing it at 25% or 16%. And so now I'm taking my zoom tool and clicking into it until it's at 100%. Okay, so now the next thing is I need to be able to sometimes make this image smaller and then sometimes make it bigger again, but I'm just working from the same image. So if I currently made it smaller, and I could do that by going up to Edit, Transform. Oh, actually I can't do Transform yet because my layer is locked. So I'm going to go over to my background layer, and I'm going to unlock it by clicking on that icon of the lock and dragging it into the trash can. And now I can unlock it. So I'll go into Edit, Transform, Scale, and this is to resize it. Take one of those anchor points. Now I'm just kind of showing you the problem with this and the way that I don't want you to do it first. So I'm holding the Shift key down, and let's say I just wanted to have one example with this very small. I commit to it, and now I've changed my mind. I'm going to do the keyboard shortcut, this time Control T, to get that bounding box, and I want to make it larger. And here's the problem. My turkeys are now pixelated. This is not what I wanted. So when I made the image smaller, Photoshop threw away a bunch of pixels. When I took that same image that had the pixels thrown away and I made it larger, it had to add pixels, but it's kind of a guessing game. It, of course, can't do the pixels as well as they were originally. I get a pixelated image. So I'm going to go to my history panel, and the only way I can fix this is going back in my states until I come back to my image when it was at its good state. All right, so how do I do this? What do I need to do so I don't have this problem? I'm going to convert my layer to a smart filter. A smart filter means that basically Photoshop is always going to preserve this image, and even when I scale it and make it smaller, it's not actually committing. It looks like a commit. I hit the commit mark, the commit check, but I'm not actually doing that. It's just a preview, and now I can do Control T again, make it larger again, and as you can see, I don't have the pixelated turkey problem. So that's great. So that's the solution. So again, you're going to open up your image. You're going to go to the crop, put in 6 inches, 6 inches, 72, and then you're going to unlock your layer and convert. Go to Filter, Convert for Smart Filter. At this point, what I can do is use my History panel and this really cool option at the bottom, which is to create a new document from the current state to make my 6 documents. So I'm just going to click on this one, and notice up here it actually just created a new version, a new document of the state that I was on. I'm going to go back to my original, and I'm going to do that 5 more times. 2, 3, 4, 5. And up here in my tabs, you can see I have 6 copies of the same document. All right. So what can we do with these? We definitely want for all of them for you to try the image with different bleeds, different margins. So I'll just take one, for example. I'm going to do Control T. And what would this look like if I had a certain amount of margin? I'm going to center this. Now, what does the checkerboard mean? The checkerboard means transparency. I'm going to commit to this. If I save this as a JPEG, transparency becomes white. What would it look like if it was black? So if this image was framed with black around it. Well, to do that, I'm going to go over to my Layers panel and create a new layer. And I need to get my foreground color, because I'm going to fill it with black, to be black. Now, if this is the setup here, all I would need to do is click on the double-sided arrows and get black to be my foreground. If I had a different color here, let's say this was pink, red, something like that, and I wanted to get black and white here, I could click on these little guys and I could automatically get it. Or I can just click on the top color and get my color picker and go into the corner and click back black. You could get this to be black by using the paint bucket tool, which is normally you see the gradient tool first, so you have to look for the paint bucket. I like to use the keyboard shortcut Alt Backspace. Everything is black. Well, if I look over here in my layers panel, the black layer is on top. I need to switch that layer order, and now here I see my image, and I have a black border. Okay, so this could be one way of talking about borders. Now I need to get my text. Scroll down here. I'm going to take this quote, advice to intellectuals, let no one represent you. Copy that. I'm just using keyboard shortcuts. Take my text tool over here and paste it in. So currently the text is black, and that's okay. I might keep it black. I'm going to move it over. Now, no matter what I do, even if I make this text larger, text on an image is kind of difficult to see. And if you notice how some of these examples have a solid color or a partially solid color behind it. So let's talk about how you could do that. I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to take this rectangular selection tool, the rectangular marquee tool, and I'm going to make a selection a little bit larger than my text. I can always change this size later on. And I'm going to fill this with a color, so I think I want to have white. And there you have it, white. I could use the keyboard shortcut, Alt Backspace, and then I want to deselect this. That is, you could go up to Select, Deselect, or use Control D as the keyboard shortcut. Now the problem is, just like I had before, this layer is on top of my text, so I need to switch that layer order. And now I can see the text on top of the white box. And at this point, I'm going to take the Move tool, and I want to make sure Auto Select is selected, so that way whatever I want to move, I can just click and Photoshop will pick the correct layer for me. Let's say I want to move this one, it'll pick the correct layer. And I might want to start, I obviously don't want to cover up the turkeys. What does it look like if here's my frame? And probably I'd want to have this go all the way to the edge, so I'm going to do Control, make sure I'm on the right layer, Control T, Control T, and just push this over to the edge. So here's one example of framing. It's kind of what I would call dynamic. Like I'm taking this white frame and I'm not just locking it to the frame inside of here, I'm pushing it over to bridge the gap between this frame and this frame. So this is essentially, this one section here is unifying the two. And it kind of, our eye goes from right to left because of the way we read. It sort of pulls our eye like this. So that's one option. But I certainly wouldn't be satisfied just stopping at the first one. I would try, what is it like if it's down here? What is it like if it's over here? And just keep going and moving. And the box and the text, you can change the size and you don't have to worry about losing their image quality. Check that. So what would it look like? Maybe I want to have this all the way over here. Or what would it look like if it's up here? So just keep experimenting. Get my text tool and move that up and see what it looks like. You can start with the examples like I have on Blackboard, but then push them and see what else you could come up with. So just to show you how can you get that transparency, I mean there are a couple ways you could do it, but probably the easiest way is if you go over to your layers panel, and up here at above your layers panel there's an option for opacity. I have to make sure I'm selected on the right layer, and I could click on that slider and I could lower that down. So that could be another element to play with. What is it like if that box is there but it's not completely opaque? Okay, so save this one and then go over to the next one and start again. Try transforming it in a different way. What is it like if I have a partial bleed? Maybe it's here. Maybe I do it like one of those examples where it's halfway and then I have the text over here. Okay, let me know if you have any questions.